Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unlocking one of the absolute most fascinating and honestly kind of visceral medical mysteries in human history. We're talking about the ancient surgeons and the mummy race. We're traveling back thousands of years to ancient Egypt, but we're not just looking at grand monuments here. No, we're going to stand right beside the operating table of some of the most ingenious and intense surgeons the ancient world ever produced. We're going to decode the exact step-by-step technical process they used to literally defy death itself.
So, picture this. Imagine being faced with this high-stakes forensic challenge. How do you keep a human body perfectly intact until the end of time? Now, in ancient Egypt, this wasn't just some hypothetical thought experiment. It was a mandatory requirement. You see, the rulers of ancient Egypt didn't just consider themselves kings. They boldly claimed to be living gods on earth. But that monumental claim came with a massive biological problem. Their entire belief system dictated that their divine status was completely dependent on their physical body.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where the psychology gets truly fascinating. This belief triggered what we call the mummy race. It was this intense, high-stakes competition among Egyptian pharaohs. They realized that every pharaoh before them had died, right? But to prove they were still a god in the afterlife, their physical shell absolutely had to remain completely pristine and safe forever.
Think about it this way. For a mortal human, physical decay is just natural. The body fades, the legacy fades, you know how it goes. But for a god pharaoh, if their physical body decayed, their godhood literally expired. No way around it. It was a terrifying prospect for them. If they turned to dust, their divine rule ended, and they lost their place in the entire universe. So this absolute terror of decay forced them to turn to science, biology, and surgery to cheat nature.
All right, moving to Section 1, the Ancient Surgeons, Part 1, Extraction. As soon as a pharaoh died, a highly specialized team of ancient surgeons immediately took over. They were essentially forensic experts racing against the clock of natural decomposition. Their first phase was purely surgical, totally focused on removing anything that harbored moisture and bacteria. And the precision here? It's incredibly grim but technically astounding. Step 1. Total blood drainage. They had to completely empty the cardiovascular system. Step 2, and this is where it gets famous, the surgeons would take a specialized, curved metal hook, insert it directly up the pharaoh's nose, and systematically pull the brain tissue out through the nasal cavity. Yeah. Finally, Step 3, they performed this massive operation to completely extract all the major internal organs. The lungs, the liver, the kidneys, everything that could rot was ruthlessly removed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the one massive exception to this brutal extraction process. With all those other organs being ripped out and tossed aside, the surgeons left one single organ entirely alone, treating it with this immense level of respect: the heart. So you gotta ask, why did the heart get special treatment? Well, the heart was meticulously secured and preserved inside a very special jar. In their belief system, you see, the heart wasn't just a pump for blood. It was the actual seat of the soul, the absolute center of intellect and emotion. The pharaoh absolutely needed it for the afterlife. So while the brain was literally pulled through the nose and thrown away, the heart was carefully sealed in a jar to accompany the body on its eternal journey.
Let's look at Section 2, the Ancient Surgeons. Part 2, Preservation.
Once that visceral extraction was complete, the surgeons had to chemically treat the remaining skin, muscle, and bone so it would never, ever rot. This phase was highly systematic. Okay, so the heart is safe in its jar. Now the hollowed-out body is submerged into a massive bath filled with a highly specialized saltwater mixture. The goal here wasn't just to wash or clean the body, it was to aggressively draw out every single microscopic drop of moisture from the human tissue.
40. That is exactly how many days the pharaoh's body spent submerged in that harsh, dehydrating salt bath. Just let that sink in for a second. It was a grueling chemical desiccation process. For 40 long days, the salt violently pulled the water out of the cells, until the body was, well, little more than a perfectly sterilized, completely dried out husk.
So the crucial point is, after 40 days of heavy dehydration like that, a human body shrinks. It caves in. It looks completely deflated. But remember the rules of the mummy race we talked about. The pharaoh must look exactly like their living, godly self. To fix this structural problem, the surgeons used an incredibly ingenious technique. They actually took fine sand and meticulously packed it deep into the empty bodily cavities. The sand acted like a structural filler, plumping the body back up and perfectly maintaining the pharaoh's true, commanding physical shape forever.
Moving right along to Section 3, Reshaping and Anointing, the Final Burial. So with the body now perfectly preserved and structurally sound, the surgeons step back and the cosmetic and religious priests step in to prepare the god pharaoh for eternity. This is really where the luxury meets the science. The perfectly dried skin is heavily anointed with these fragrant oils to give it a lifelike suppleness. Then it's coated in thick honey, which actually we know today has incredible natural antibacterial and preserving properties. After that, the body is tightly and eternally wrapped in those iconic white bandages we all recognize. And finally, the whole shebang is sealed inside a highly expensive, elaborate coffin, packed to the absolute brim with survival essentials. We're talking massive amounts of gold, actual food, and of course that jar containing their preserved heart.
Now, let's move to and see how this builds, because this obsession totally didn't stop at the operating table. Once mummification became the standard for the rulers, the mummy race actually escalated into an all-out architectural arms race. I mean, if you have an immortal body, you're going to need an immortal house to protect it, right? First, they built simple temples over the mummies. But then, as each pharaoh tried to outdo the guy before him, the temples grew, and thus, the era of the pyramids began. Literally, every new pharaoh wanted their tomb to be larger and grander than the one before it.
Because of this wild desire to protect a mummified body, they sparked an architectural arms race that changed the world. They built a structure so massive that it remained the tallest building on planet Earth for 3,500 years, only eventually being surpassed by a church in London. And to put that weight into a modern perspective for you, if you took today's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, and you duplicated it 12 times, Khufu's pyramid is still heavier than all 12 of those combined. It's just mind-blowing. That is the staggering physical legacy of a people trying to cheat death.
Which really leaves us with something profound to think about. We look back at the ancient surgeons, their nose hooks, their 40-day salt baths, and the literal mountains of stone they built just to protect a single human body from decaying. But today, we're still obsessed with cheating death, aren't we? Just through genetics, AI, and modern medicine. So I want to leave you with this. If an ancient medical procedure to cheat death led to the pyramids, what monuments will our modern pursuit of immortality leave behind?